The first night, the fog came down from the ridge like a living thing. We'd pitched camp near the old logging road that cuts through Devil's Hollow, a place that, according to the locals in town, no one should linger after dark. The story went that back in the 1920s, a miner named Jedediah Crick was buried alive when a shaft collapsed deep under the ridge. His spirit, they said, never left. Folks claimed to hear the sound of his pick striking stone on moonless nights, or see his lantern flickering through the mist. Naturally, we all laughed. College kids, long weekend, cold beer, and a fire crackling beneath the hemlocks. It was the perfect recipe for ignoring superstition. There were 5 of us: me, Mark, Tessa, Josh, and Emily. We'd picked the site because it was close to the river and had flat ground for tents. Josh was the local among us, and it was his idea to visit Devil's Hollow in the first place. He said his granddad used to tell him about the old mine entrances, most of them sealed up now, and how kids in the area dared each other to find Crick's Hole, the one where Jedediah supposedly met his end. So naturally, that became our plan for Saturday. Hike the ridge, find the mine, take a few pictures, and have a laugh. That first evening felt charmed. The air smelled of pine and damp earth. Fireflies blinked low over the clearing. We roasted sausages, told dumb stories, and tried to spook each other with half-remembered ghost tales. When the fire died low, Tessa started humming. Some old folk tune she said she learned from her grandmother. And the sound of it carried strangely in the fog. I remember thinking how quiet the woods had gotten. Even the crickets had gone still. Then, from somewhere up the slope, came a faint metallic clink. 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 We froze. Mark grinned and said, "Well, guess old Jed's still on shift." A nervous chuckle rippled around the fire, but I saw Emily glance at Josh. He was staring into the dark with this furrowed brow, like he was trying to locate the sound. "Probably water dripping in one of the shafts," he muttered, though not like he fully believed it. The sound faded after a while, and we shrugged it off. But when I turned in for the night, the fog had thickened into a pale wall around our camp. Lying in my tent, I could hear the faint scrape of something, metal maybe, dragging over stone. I told myself it was just my imagination. But sometime after midnight I smelled smoke, sharp, acrid, not from our campfire. And, drifting through the mist outside, for a moment I swore I saw the faint swing of a lantern's glow. Morning came grey and heavy with fog, clinging to every branch and stone like wet wool. The forest was silent, except for the river murmuring below the ridge. I stepped out of my tent to find Josh already poking at the ashes of our fire, his face pale and drawn. "You hear anything last night?" he asked, without looking up. I told him I thought I'd seen a light, but maybe I'd dreamed it. He just nodded, like he didn't want to talk about it. Tessa and Emily emerged next, laughing sleepily, but their cheer faded quick when they noticed how quiet the woods were. Even the birds hadn't started up yet. Mark cracked open a thermos of coffee and tried to lighten the mood, saying, "Guess the ghost punched out early." None of us laughed this time. After breakfast, we packed day packs and set out to find the old mine entrances. The trail wound upward through stands of fir and birch, slick with dew. Halfway up the ridge, we found a set of rusted rails poking through the moss, the remnants of a mining tram. From there, the woods grew denser, darker, until the light seemed to seep away between the trees. Josh led the way, saying the mine we wanted should be just beyond a rocky bluff. We reached it near noon. The entrance was nothing more than a jagged mouth in the hillside, half collapsed and sealed with old timbers. A warning sign, its paint long gone, hung crooked on a nail. The air that flowed from inside was cold, with a bitter mineral smell. Mark tossed a stone into the darkness and grinned when it clattered down some unseen shaft. "There's your ghost," he said. But before anyone could answer, we all heard it. That same metallic clink, 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 echoing faintly from somewhere below. The rhythm was steady, deliberate, like someone swinging a pick. Tessa's hand found mine. "You hear that too?" she whispered. Josh stepped closer to the collapsed entrance, peering into the shadows. "Could be groundwater dripping onto metal," he said, though his voice quavered. Then something shifted inside the mine. A soft scrape, like boots over gravel. We all took a step back. "Could be an animal," Emily offered, though she didn't sound convinced. Just then, a faint light flickered deep in the shaft. It wasn't sunlight, it moved too steadily for that, bobbing as though carried by a hand. For a heartbeat, we stood rooted there, watching that dim orange glow hover in the darkness. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, it vanished. Mark forced a laugh and said, "Old batteries catching a reflection, that's all." But when he turned to walk away, the colour had drained from his face. None of us said another word on the hike back to camp. By the time we returned, the fog had lifted, leaving the forest unnaturally still. But when I bent to rekindle the fire, I noticed something strange in the ashes. Half buried beneath the soot, it was a small, rusted fragment of iron, shaped like the head of a mining pick. It hadn't been there the night before. I turned the fragment over in my hand, brushing away the ash. The metal was rough and pitted, but the edge still held a faint sharpness. Josh crouched beside me, his brow furrowed. "That wasn't here last night," he said flatly. I cleaned the fire pit before bed. The others gathered around, silent. Emily suggested maybe it was buried in the dirt all along, but her voice was thin, unsteady. Tessa crossed her arms tight over her chest and muttered, "Maybe Jedediah's just returning what's his." Mark rolled his eyes, but even he looked uneasy. "It's an old mining area," he said. "You can't dig anywhere around here without finding iron scraps." He tossed the piece aside, but it landed point first in the dirt, sticking upright as if something unseen had driven it there. We all stared at it for a moment, before Josh kicked dirt over it and muttered, "Let's just get some lunch." We tried to shake off the tension. Sandwiches, trail mix, lukewarm beer. It should have felt normal. But the forest seemed to have grown a second silence beneath the ordinary sounds. The breeze through the leaves felt watchful somehow. When Emily went down to the river to fill her water bottle, she came back pale, holding something out in her palm. A chunk of coal, damp and black as pitch. "It was sitting right on the bank," she said. "Just there." None of us spoke for a while after that. By late afternoon, we decided to make a fire early, hoping warmth and light would settle our nerves. As the sun sank behind the ridge, long shadows crept over camp. The woods filled with that dusky half-light, where every stump looks like a crouched figure. I remember Tessa staring into the trees, her expression distant. "You ever notice," she said softly, "how fog only rolls downhill here, never up?" Mark chuckled, but the sound faltered when, as if on cue, a wisp of mist drifted between the trees and began snaking toward camp. Slow, deliberate, like something alive. It thickened as it came, swallowing the trunks one by one. "Okay, that's weird," Josh said. He got up to check the air temperature, old habit from guiding trips, and frowned. "It's warm everywhere except over there," he said, pointing toward the direction of the mine. "Feels like cold air's bleeding straight down the hill." Then came the smell again. That acrid tang of smoke and metal. A sound followed, faint but clear. The rasp of metal scraping stone. We all froze. The fire popped, sending sparks skyward, and in the glow, I thought I saw movement at the tree line. A flicker of light, swaying back and forth like a lantern carried through the fog. No one said anything. We just stood there, 5 shapes bathed in firelight, listening to that slow, rhythmic clink, clink, clink. It echoed once more, then fell silent. Mark exhaled a shaky laugh. "All right," he said. "Tomorrow morning we're leaving." But when the fog finally reached the camp, I realized something chilling. It wasn't drifting anymore. It was pouring straight down the slope, as if drawn by gravity to the center of our fire. The fog swallowed the camp whole in a matter of seconds. One moment, I could see the firelight glinting off Mark's jacket. The next, he was just a smudge in a curtain of grey. The air turned cold enough that I could see my breath, and the fire hissed as if the mist itself were trying to smother it. Josh called out, something about grabbing the lanterns, but his voice seemed to come from 2 places at once, one near me and one deep in the trees. Tessa clutched my arm. "That's not him," she whispered. "That voice, it's off." I wanted to tell her she was just spooked, but I couldn't bring myself to say it. Somewhere beyond the firelight came the sound again. Clink, clink, clink. It was closer this time. Mark shouted, "All right, whoever's out there, enough with the games." His voice cracked on the last word. The fog rippled in response, almost like it had heard him. Then came another sound, a hollow, dragging scrape. Metal over rock, echoing down from the ridge. Emily let out a sob. We huddled close to the fire, watching the shadows writhe at its edge. Josh pulled his flashlight from his belt and swung the beam toward the sound. For a second, the light caught something moving, something tall, draped in tatters, its face hidden by the glow of what looked like a lantern. It was gone as soon as it appeared, leaving the flashlight beam cutting through empty fog. "Back to the cars," Josh said. His voice had turned low, practical. "Now." None of us argued. We packed what we could, half our gear still lying scattered in the dark, and followed him toward the trail. The fog made every direction look the same. More than once we stumbled over roots or brushed against trees we could barely see. I could hear Emily crying softly behind me. When we reached the old logging road, I finally saw it again. That faint orange light, swaying slowly between the trees off to our right. It wasn't bright enough to see what carried it, but it moved like someone walking. Steady, purposeful. Josh stopped us with a raised hand. "No one move," he whispered. The sound of metal on stone came again, louder now, followed by a creak, wood under weight, like an old shaft door swinging on rusted hinges. Then, faintly, a man's voice, low, guttural, almost lost in the fog. I couldn't make out the words, but they had a rhythm to them, like someone talking to himself while working. Tessa squeezed my arm. "He's saying it's mine." Whether she truly heard it or just imagined it, I couldn't tell. But in that instant, The light turned sharply toward us, flaring brighter. Josh shouted, "Run!" Branches whipped against my face as we tore down the trail. Behind us, I could hear the rhythmic clink, 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 chasing through the fog, faster now, like a heartbeat echoing in metal. I didn't look back, not once, until we burst out onto the gravel lot where our cars sat waiting under a thin moon. When I did, the fog had stopped at the tree line. It just hung there, pulsing faintly. And for one brief moment, deep inside it, a dim orange light flickered and went out. We didn't sleep that night. We sat in our cars with the engines running, fog beading on the windshields, headlights slicing into the trees. Nobody spoke for a long time. Mark's hands trembled as he tried to light a cigarette, but it broke clean in half between his fingers. Tessa was staring at the tree line like she expected something to step out at any moment. Only Josh moved. He got out, walked to the back of his truck, and just stood there, watching the forest. After a while, he said quietly, "My granddad used to say Jedediah Crick never died down there. Said he dug his way out one night and went right back to work." Then he looked at us. Said the mountain kept him. At dawn, we packed what little we'd salvaged and left Devil's Hollow behind. The fog thinned as the sun came up, and by the time we hit the main road, it felt like we'd escaped something. Not just fear, but a presence that had been pressing against us all night. None of us spoke until we reached town. When we stopped for gas, the clerk behind the counter noticed our dirty clothes and hollow faces. "You kids camping up the hollow?" he asked. Josh nodded. The man shook his head slowly. "Shouldn't have gone up there. Last year, a guy from the Forestry Service went missing, checking old man seals. They never found him. Just his light." That was enough to keep us silent the rest of the ride home. Weeks later, I got a text from Tessa, a photo she'd taken that first evening, back when we were all laughing by the fire. She'd only noticed it while scrolling through her pictures. Behind us, half hidden by the trees, was a faint orange glow. At first glance, it looked like a trick of the firelight. But when you zoomed in, it was unmistakably shaped like a lantern flame. We all promised never to go back, and as far as I know, no one has. But sometimes, on cold autumn nights, when fog rolls low across the valley, I'll catch the faint smell of smoke in the air, sharp and metallic, like burned iron. I'll remember the way that old pickhead stood upright in the dirt, as if planted by an unseen hand. And I'll wonder if Jedediah's ghost was ever the real danger up there. Because the next spring, a landslide was reported near Devil's Hollow. Search and rescue teams found the remains of an unmarked shaft. The timbers split, the earth still settling. Among the rubble, they uncovered the bones of at least 2 men, both wearing early 20th century mining gear. One of them, they said, had a lantern still clutched in his hand. And nearby, embedded in the rock, was a fresh gouge, deep, deliberate, the mark of a pick swung hard and true. Sometimes I think about that night and wonder, maybe the legend wasn't about a ghost at all. Maybe it was a warning. The mountain reminding anyone foolish enough to disturb it that some work never ends, and some debts are never fully buried.